Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It's IB Nation Sports Talk. I'm Vince. That's Jesse. Obviously, Sean is not here because he is soaking up the rays down in Miami. And because Notre Dame has a basketball game against the Miami Hurricanes this evening. And so I think that tip is around 7:30. And so he's going to be down there. He'll be on the mic for that one. Should be a fairly easy game for the Irish, I would imagine. In that one, I don't know how good Miami is. I don't think that they're all that great. So this should be a walk in the park. I got a text from Sean earlier today. He said, "Big Game Karen is in the building for this game." He said, for what honestly his exact words, but basically it was, she's here for a game that doesn't matter. Let's see here. What did he say? He said, "Big Game Karen is here for a little game." So there you go. So you're going to get two people on the mic tonight. Karen Keys and Sean Steyer. So make sure you tune in for that at 7:30 tonight. But there's other stuff that's on tonight as well. We're not gonna promote anything that's anti-Notre Dame. Not anti-Notre Dame, anything that's not Notre Dame. So let's see here.
Did you see that one of the Cavender twins who plays on the Miami basketball team and dates Carson Beck?
Oh, we're going to hold on. We're going to talk.
Is that in the
about
fire?
That. It's in the fire already. It's in the fire. So
for some reason, I can't access that doc you sent me. So you'll have to forgive me because
I just took you off of it and now I'm going to reshare it. So hopefully you can get in there.
Never had this issue before.
Just shared it. So hopefully you can now get in there. I saw your dad jump in and out of it as I was typing some stuff up earlier today. So I shared it with both you guys. So you should be able to get into it now. You'll have to let me know if you can or cannot. Well, today's a mailbag day, everybody. And since we didn't have a show last night, we moved our mailbag show, our Wednesday mailbag show, to tonight. So get your questions in, and we'll do our best to answer them. And we'll go until we really don't have any more questions left, and then we'll jump into rapid fire because that's what we're gonna do. I actually have a decent chunk of rapid fire. They just kept coming to me, so we'll have to see how that goes. But I got a bunch. Are you able to get in?
I'm in.
All right, good. All right. So Andre has our first question of the day. He says, if there's three things you can change about the state of college football, what would they be? That's a big macro type question there, Andre. I'd
have more restrictions on the transfer portal.
Absolutely.
I don't want to get too specific, but restrictions on the transfer portal would be one. I'd get rid of conference champions getting an automatic top 4 bid. I know that, that's probably going to take care of itself because it sounds like
it.
Format is going to be ever changing because the SEC and the Big Ten just want to cry over one.
They're never happy.
Yeah, they're never happy.
That's the thing.
And honestly, I would probably go to, and this might be a little bit of a crazy one, but I would go to some form of like regulation in conferences. If you are a bottom feeder consistently, I think you should be kicked out to the group of 5 or whatever the pack schools are doing. And I think group of 5 teams should have a shot to get into some of these bigger Power 4 conferences. So it's kind of like, Vince, if you think about it, it's like Indiana high school football. You have a lot of success, you win state championships, you bump up a class. And if you struggle at the higher class, I'd like to see you move down a little bit.
A little relegation.
Yeah, some relegation, just how European soccer does it. And I just, again, I'm tired of seeing the same old teams just be consistently bad. I want to see other teams get a chance and maybe light a fire under the butt of some of those teams that have been consistently bad.
They're just sitting back and taking the conference money and not having to worry about putting a quality product on the field.
Right. It's just like there's not a clear effort, in my opinion, for some of these programs. It's just like, all right, we'll go out there, we'll play some games, we'll generate some revenue, we'll get our share from the conference, and that's it. They're not serious about being competitive.
Yeah, I get that. I'm on board with a lot of what you said. I think the transfer portal is ridiculous. I would definitely not keep that the same. There would definitely be more regulations on that. That's a big one for me. I think I like NIL. I think NIL is a good thing in the manner in which it was intended. Unfortunately, the vast majority of schools don't use it that way, and that's the problem. So you're going to need to regulate NIL. So I guess I would go one of two ways. You either regulate NIL, or if you're just going to pay these guys salaries and you're going to just do that and make it basically like professional sports, then there needs to be a salary cap. Like, you need to play with a salary cap. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at. I like a salary cap, frankly. I think it keeps things a little bit more even keel, and you won't run into the blank check for high school kids if that's the case. So you either need to regulate NIL and make it for actually name, image, and likeness. You actually have to do something in order to get the money that you're being promised, or just scrap NIL altogether and just say you're paying players and make it like contracts and salary caps. I mean, you might as well. I just, right now it's the Wild West and I don't like it. I just don't like it. I know everything's above board now and everybody's just paying everybody whatever, but put a cap on it. Put a cap on it. So that's where I'm at. So I think, conference championships are whatever. I mean, I'm not, Notre Dame's not in a conference, so it doesn't really affect me here nor there. But it seems like they are, with the 12-team playoff, it seems like conference championships are not important anymore. They're just there to grab money. So, why have them? I would just get rid of them, to be perfectly honest with you. So that would be something that I would look at for sure. So portal, NIL, and conference makeup, and kind of the way things operate there, make it a little bit more uniform. So I think that's what I would do off the top of my head. All right, we got some questions rolling in here, Jesse. This is a good thing. All right, here we go. This is fun. So Paolo 27 says, "Sorry, Vince, this Dodger fan doesn't agree with you, but go Dodgers." And he doesn't agree on the salary cap.
I don't think the MLB needs a salary cap. They think that they need a salary floor. I mean, you got teams like the Pirates, the Reds. They just don't want to pay anyone, and so I don't think the rest of the league should be, basically compromised because of it. And more specifically, like, it sucks what the Dodgers are doing, but they're getting creative. They have so many deferred payments. It's not the Dodgers' fault that other owners don't want to spend.
I agree.
They're cheap owners.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think you need a floor more than you need a cap in the MLB.
That's fair. I think that's fair. We got a baseball question here from Andre, since we're kind of on the topic of baseball. He says, "Jesse, what is your estimation on the Cubs making the playoffs this year?"
So I've been looking at we're in the thick of spring training. Actually, the Cubs are playing the Dodgers right now in the spring training game. Yep. I saw a projection today. First power rankings came out. Had the Cubs at 6th. Saw a lot of win projections by computer models that had them in the 90 to kind of 93 range-ish. I think my expectations this season for the Cubs are contending, if not winning the division. But definitely a playoff team, whether it's winning the division, a wild card spot. They didn't make any huge sexy moves in the offseason. Their biggest move was getting, Kyle Tucker for the last year on his deal, and kind of parting ways with Cody Bellinger. But they got really good in the bullpen. They picked up a lot of kind of, depth pieces in terms of utility guys.
Well, the bullpen was a disaster last year. So, I mean,
right. And I think this roster is going to look more like a Craig Counsell roster that he had in Milwaukee. Good pitching, really good defense. They're not going to have a slugger who's, hitting 50 home runs or anything crazy. They're just going to be a fundamentally sound baseball team. Good defense, good pitching, stealing bases, and getting timely hits. So
let's go.
I think that the Cubs are right around a 90-win team.
Well, and I also think the NL Central is not great, to be perfectly honest with you. John says the Pirates are going to win the division, and because Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in baseball.
Unfortunately, he only
That's
pitches every
fantastic.
fifth day.
Yeah, exactly. He can only win you 20 games or so. And I don't know who's going to win the other 75 for the Pirates in order to get them to win the division and get into the playoffs. So don't see that happening. But hey, you are more than welcome to cheer for the Pirates and cheer for Paul Skeens. He's actually really good. The problem is the rest of the roster is awful. So good luck with that. But the Central's not great. Like, I'm not that impressed with the Central right now. I think the Central is there for the taking. It'll probably end up being the Cardinals, Brewers, and Cubs battling it out for the division title, as it pretty much has been for the last decade or more. And I think the Cubs have made some shrewd moves. I mean, look, I would have loved for them to land a bigger fish at third base, obviously. They had every opportunity to do that, and they didn't. And that fish went to Boston. But I still think they've got some pretty good pieces in place to make some noise, and it should still be a fun team to follow. So I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they're going to make the playoffs as a division winner. Now, where does that put them next to some of the other really good teams in the National League? That remains to be seen. But for right now, I'll pin them to win the Central. I think they got a good shot at it.
I think another great aspect for the Cubs is they've got 8 of the top 100 prospects right now, boasting one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. So that can really benefit you in one of two ways. You can call up those guys throughout the season, or two, when you start a season off hot and come trade deadline, you need a couple more pieces to put you over the hump. They've got a farm system to make some moves. So I think they're in a really good spot to begin this season.
Yep, I completely agree. I'm excited to watch this team, and they will be, first pitch is over overseas, I do believe, in less than a month, Jesse.
Yeah.
I believe it's like March 16th or 18th, something like that. So they got a 2-game series in Japan. So
I got
going to be here soon.
I got some free knowledge for everyone.
Uh-oh.
If you are into futures and season-long bets, I would take Pete Crow Armstrong's over on steals. Last time I saw on FanDuel, he's the center fielder for the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
I think his over-under was around 26, 27 and a half. And he had over 20 last season, and he didn't play a full schedule. And I think he's naturally going to be on base more. He's one of the fastest guys in baseball. And he's going to play 40 more games compared than what he did last season. So you add all that up, I think that equates to about 4 or 5 more steals. So I know I took it, and I don't advise it, but I think it's a really smart bet. And so I wanted to get that out there.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea why he wears 52?
I don't.
Because I don't know why, and I don't know why he still has it. It doesn't make any sense to me. There are so many other numbers that you could have. 52. It just doesn't make sense.
There's got to be a reason.
Right? I need to find, if anybody knows the reason that he wears 52, outside of the fact that it was just assigned to him in spring training, I need to know, because it's time. Like, Pete Crow Armstrong is not a big individual, obviously, from a stature standpoint, I don't believe. And, obviously his name just arcs around the back of him because he's, it's got such a long name. And then 52 just looks so odd. He's 5'11", 184 pounds. Like, he is not a big guy. He needs a single digit. He needs a single digit. So if anybody knows why, I need to know, because I feel like I need to let him know that he needs to be a single digit, whatever that digit is. I don't care. But anyway, all right, we got some other questions in here. Let's jump in here from James Mertz. He says, how long does it typically take a position coach to implement their style? For example, when do you expect Ash's style to become more solidified this coming season? Well, Ash isn't
Yeah,
a position coach, first of all. He's the coordinator. So that's part, that's maybe that's splitting hairs. But like I think of a position coach, I think of like the new running backs coach. Like, how long is it going to be until you kind of see his fingerprint on the running backs? You know what I mean? So let's take it from that aspect to answer the question, Jesse. So, like the running backs coach, how long do you think it'll take to see his fingerprint on them?
Yeah, I think this is a tough question, and it's really hard to know because a lot of times when a coach comes in and it's not a part of a brand new staff, you're still kind of following that skeleton of what's already in place and what the other coach kind of left behind. But obviously, there's going to be things that the new position coach does that's going to differ compared to the old position coach. I think personally, you might see it more of kind of like individual time in practice, right? Or the things that they're focusing on,
Sure.
and specific drills. But again, the overall offensive philosophy and what is expected out of the running backs doesn't change. I think it's how you prepare the running backs, what drills you're putting them through, what kind of film you're doing, how often you're breaking down film. Those sort of things, I think, go more into the changes that you might see. And I don't think that those necessarily take time. It's just that's kind of their job to come into, okay, this is what we need to accomplish with our running backs in the offense. Here are the drills that I want to execute because I think that's going to prepare our guys. Or here's the film that we need to crunch or watch to in order to be ready. So I think it's more of kind of like a means and methods type thing. You just go about getting to the end result in a different way. And that's, again, mainly through, your individual drills and things that you're working on in practice before you join up in those team sessions.
Yeah, I think we as the media, with the opportunity to cover practice, like we're going to see kind of the fingerprint a little bit earlier than maybe the average fan because of the drills and some of those different things and the points of emphasis and just listening to him coach. So I think that'll be the biggest difference. Now, on the field, you're not going to see a whole lot. It's going to be points of emphasis. And so when he's interviewed and people ask him like, what's the most important thing that you want to stress to your running backs? You know what I mean? Like, is it going to be ball security? Is it going to be, blocking? Is it, what is it going to be? And I think that will show, but at a position like running back, it's tough because they were so well coached before. Hopefully they're going to continue to be well coached. And I don't know that you're going to be able to see much of a fingerprint in a game situation, at the running back position. Now, as far as Chris Ash is concerned, he hasn't been a defensive coordinator in a while. And so I am, one of the things I'm curious about from a spring practice standpoint is, is his defense going to look different than Al Golden's defense, right? What's the emphasis going to be there? Are they going to still use a rover? Are they, what is it going to look like? Is it going to be, we know that Al Golden liked to fire his linebackers and things like that. I don't even think you're going to see that, even if that is the case in the spring. So we're going to be talking, into the fall and things like that. The kids are going to notice it right away because they're going to notice what the emphasis is. They're going to notice what the philosophy is of the defense and how it's just a different guy, bringing that to them on a daily basis. And so the kids will notice it real fast. I think it'll take a little bit longer for us to notice. I think if you're comparing the two, I would say you will notice Chris Ash before you would notice the new running backs coach, because you're talking about a scheme change potentially as opposed to just, drill work and emphasis and things like that. I think you'll be able to notice with the naked eye a new coordinator faster than you'll be able to realize a new position coach. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, but great question, James. That's a really, really good question. All right, let's see here. Justin has a good one. I'll let you take this one first. So, whom do you think has the most input on starting quarterback? Gino Guidugli, Mike Denbrock, Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, I think honestly it comes down to offensive coordinator. Marcus Freeman has tasked that to Mike Denbrock, and that's kind of his job. Is you have an offense, you kind of And again, Marcus Freeman has probably not an influence, but has kind of told Mike Denbrock some of the things, foundation pieces that he wants to accomplish, and running the ball, time of possession, that sort of thing. And then it's Mike Denbrock's job to kind of take those things into consideration and blend them into his offense to be as efficient as possible. And then Mike Denbrock goes to Gino, kind of what we were just talking about, and saying, hey, this is what our quarterback needs. This is what our quarterback needs to be able to do in this offense. It's your job to get him ready and prepare him through various drills, film, whatever it might be. So I think that it's mainly Mike Denbrock that has the most input because he is the offensive coordinator. It is his offense at the end of the day, and it's Gino's job to prepare the quarterbacks under Mike Denbrock's offense.
Could not agree more. Mike Denbrock is going to have the final say, and Marcus Freeman is going to have input, obviously, from like a leadership standpoint, and what he sees and things like that. Obviously, Gino Guidugli is going to have input based on the criteria that Mike Denbrock puts out there for what he wants in a starting quarterback. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Mike Denbrock. He's going to be the one to, again, it's the captain of the ship, right? Like he's the one that's running the offense. Who do you want running your offense on the field? That's absolutely Mike Denbrock's decision. You know what I mean? Now, if two guys are operating the offense in the exact same way, then you could have a Marcus Freeman, split the tie, like that kind of a thing. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think at the end of the day, Mike Denbrock is going to be the one that has the final say in this whole thing. I mean, he knows what's best for whatever offense that he wants to run, right? So it's going to be Mike Denbrock, and that's the way it should be too. Marcus Freeman knows football, obviously. His history is on the defensive side of the ball, but he also has, like a personal relationship with the starting quarterback, so he's going to have a say. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, I think it's Mike Denbrock for sure. All right, let's see where we're at. How about, women's basketball question from I Am Tenzin. So now with the destruction of another top team in Duke, Notre Dame women's basketball will win the title easily. What would finally convince you, if not easily?
I think any championship is never easy or done easily. Still a good amount of teams out there. Notre Dame has the best guard combination in the entire country. And I don't think it's really debatable at this point. They've added some size. They've got some toughness. They play really good defense. I think what would hinder or slow them down on this easily path is still kind of, I think, what a lot of us have been saying the last couple of years. And, I know they got Kate Koval and she's still working in and plays really well. But I would be scared against like a legit big, like a girl who is, a dominating big essentially, right? Because I don't know that Notre Dame has the legit size and toughness to handle, a true big down low. And it would have to be in combination with a really good guard as well. So you're kind of, working in and out of the post with your big and guard. Because obviously you can't just win a game with a really good big player. You kind of have to, again, work in and out of the post a lot. So you would need a good guard and predominantly a really good big player, because I don't know that Notre Dame has played a team like that. And I remember a couple years ago, like one of those South Carolina teams had two really big girls, and like that would be a nightmare for Notre Dame. So I think that's what would ultimately scare me the most, is teams that have a lot of size and strength and power. You know what I mean? Those would be my teams I'm most fearful of.
I don't think that they're going to win a championship easily. Like I cannot be on board with that. I think that they will fairly easily get to the Final Four. There's always a chance that there's just a bad matchup in there someplace in the first few rounds. Obviously, they're going to be hosting the first couple of rounds, and so you feel good about that. So that gets them to the Sweet 16. I still feel pretty good about the Sweet 16 game and Elite 8 game. So the Final Four is where the rubber's going to meet the road. Once they get there, I think that's where it gets to be difficult. I'm not saying that I don't think that Notre Dame shouldn't be, the favorite or, one of the favorites, because I do. I think they are one of the best teams in the country. They're ranked number 1 right now, right? So I think getting to the Final Four will not be as big of a deal, but once they get there, no matter who it is that they face in the Final Four, unless there's like some sort of a massive upset and you're talking like a 7, 8, 9 seed in the Final Four, right? Yeah, I still think that the Final Four is going to be a challenge. Any game that they're going to play down in Tampa is going to be a challenge, and that's the way it should be. It's the Final Four. You know what I mean? Like it's not like the old days where UConn would just run roughshod through the entire tournament and just take out everybody. Like that's just not reality. There's more parity now in women's basketball, even though Notre Dame is really, really good. And so I think I hate the word easily, to be honest with you, but I think they get to the Final Four without much of an issue. But then they're going to have some tough games. All right. How about Andre? He says, do you believe that college sports needs a college commissioner? Because if that's true, who would want the job if you can't enforce the rules?
Go
ahead.
I think a commissioner, an oversight committee, something along those lines. And I think it goes back to, what you were saying, Vince, kind of earlier when we talked about what we would change, 3 things we would change about college football. You just need a cap or some sort of regulations in the transfer portal, the NIL spending, that sort of stuff. So I do think that a commissioner, would be nice overall. And especially, when you're talking about all these potential playoff committee or playoff format changes, I don't know who would want the job, and I don't know how enticing the job would be. But again, I think it would help in terms of, some sort of regulation kind of checks and balances. So it's not just the wild, wild west out here, and you can just kind of freely do what you want to a degree.
I think I agree with Mike. He says college football needs a commissioner. I think that's where, I think it's gotten to the point where football could just break off and just do their
its
own
own
thing.
league basically at this point.
And I think that would be fine. I think there would be a lot of old timers that would, balk at that idea at first. But I think if football breaks off, that will allow the conferences to go back to freaking normal. Because if football's not involved, then, USC has no business being in the Big Ten. UCLA has no business being in the Big Ten. Maryland and, Penn State have no business being in the Big Ten. Texas has no business being in the SEC. All of those different things. I think you go back to regional conferences at that point for the rest of the sports and just let football be their own entity. You're going to be able to regulate it more. If that's the case, you are going to, be able to control it. I just think it makes the most sense. And you're not going to be dragging along the Olympic sports with all the decisions that are being made with football as the primary decision maker. You know what I mean? And I think that's a problem right now with collegiate athletics. And so I never thought I would say this, but I'm actually all for football just breaking off, doing their own thing, having a commissioner, and calling it a day, and allowing the rest of the sports to reclassify their conferences regionally so that it makes more sense. That's where I'm at on this whole thing. I don't think college sports needs it. I just think football needs it, and football just needs to break off. So that's where I'm at. Okay, we got a few more here. Josh Phillips, I'm not going to bring up your question at the moment, but we're going to cover that in rapid fire. So, we're all on the same page there. And Mike re-asked the question, do we think they need a commissioner? Yes. Yeah, okay. Here we go. ND Sailor wants to know which quarterback starts at Miami if Angeli and Carr are equal in practice.
I think this is an easy question. You have to go with CJ Carr. He's a younger guy. You can develop him more. He can be, the guy that is, a multi-year quarterback, and a guy that could be fully developed in-house. And so, my thought philosophy behind all of this is, if two guys are genuinely equal or just about equal, I think you go with the younger guy because they're gonna be here longer. There's more room for growth, learning, development, all sorts of things. So, and I don't think that experience plays into this at all because Steve Angeli has played mop-up time. He started a bowl game and got some time against Penn State because Riley Leonard had to come out of the game for a little bit. So he has, in my opinion, no real experience leg on Carr by any means. And so if talent is right neck and neck, I always wanted to say to go with the younger guy.
For the basis of this question, I will answer it the way it was asked, but it would be very difficult for Angeli and Carr to be equal in practice because their God-given physical gifts are not equal. So what are we talking about when we say equal? You know what I mean? Like, are they both moving the team down the field in the, in a very, impactful manner? Is that what you mean by equal? Because they're going to be doing it in different ways. Like Angeli is not going to move the team the way Carr is going to move the team. Like that's just, they're two different kinds of styles of quarterback. And so I don't see them being equal, to be honest with you. But for the basis of the question, I agree with you, Jesse. I would go with CJ Carr because Steve Angeli is going to be a senior, in the fall. He's been here for 4 years at that point. And CJ Carr will be a sophomore. I realize that's not their playing age, but that is their school age. And you're going to have the ability to have CJ Carr longer. And the ceiling is higher. And so if they are equal in the spring, you go with the higher ceiling, and that higher ceiling is always going to be CJ Carr. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so I go with the higher ceiling guy every single time. So I would go with CJ Carr because of this, in this question. And ND Sailor did clarify. He said they're both effective at moving the team. So yeah. And he says what about the wild environment in Miami at night? If CJ Carr is who you think he is, he's going to be fine. Like, I don't think the environment is going to affect him. I would not sit him because of the environment at all. So what do you think about that? The environment.
I mean, Notre Dame has had their struggles at, playing at Miami, but obviously they just won a pretty big playoff game the last time that they played in that stadium. I just don't think that there's really any sort of leg up. Miami was good last year because they had a good quarterback. Their defense still stunk. Their defense is probably going to continue to stink. They're replacing, their top 10 quarterback with a guy who's coming off a major surgery. Listen, you got to get your feet wet at some point, right? You can't keep playing this game of, I'm scared of the moment being too big. Got to make your start at some point. You got to play a big game at some point. And I would rather you get that over with at the beginning of the season rather than try to, do this as the season goes along. It just gives me very Brian Kelly vibes, to be honest with you. Like when they started that season against Michigan a few years ago and they played both Wimbush, or maybe it wasn't Wimbush. They played two different quarterbacks, Wimbush, and I can't remember who the other guy was. No, it wasn't Ian Book. But yeah, it gives me very much Brian Kelly vibes of, well, situationally, we think this quarterback is better in this game or that game. Again, you got to pick a guy and go forward with them and show your utmost trust and rip the Band-Aid off as quickly as possible because there's always going to be a big moment. So you might as well get it done with early.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a couple of things I just want to bring up for fun. We can kind of chat about them because anytime you bring up quarterbacks, all of a sudden we've got a lot to talk about. Outbound says, I think they should really let Steve know if he doesn't have a shot. Let him get his degree this spring and transfer. They have been stringing this kid along. They haven't been stringing him along. They've been very honest with Steve Angeli about where he sits in the pecking order. He was number 2 this year. That was being honest with him. They're not stringing him along. I promise you that. And they will be honest with him. Like, they're going to tell him, they know these guys on the team know exactly where they stand day in and day out. There's not nobody's stringing anybody along. I can promise you that. So Steve will know what the situation is. Now, I don't know if they're going to name a quarterback at the end of spring, but
probably not.
I would say probably not. I agree with you. And so, do you stick around in the fall, try to battle it out, or do you cut bait and leave? I mean, I would say, I feel like the writing will be on the wall, and I have a feeling those conversations will be had, but I don't think they're stringing him along. That's the only part of this conversation, Outbound, that I have a problem with. They're not stringing him along. He knows what he's here for, and he is attacking it, and he's competitive, and I love that about Steve Angeli. So he feels like he's got as much of a shot as anybody else. So, and I'm totally cool with that. So there's going to be a legit competition in which everybody is going to be involved that is on the QB roster, at least the top 3 guys. Because Paulo27 says, is anyone giving Minchie a shot? Come on, let whoever earn the spot. Come on, guy. Remember earning. I think it must be talking to me. I don't know. I'm Team Minchie then. I'm all for whoever wins the job. I just think
I want Notre Dame to play whoever the best of the best is. I just
100%.
have an opinion on who I think the best will be.
Right, 100%. And I have an opinion that it's going to be CJ Carr. If it's Kenny Minchie, awesome. If it's CJ Carr, awesome. But I hope that if they name Steve Angeli as the starting quarterback going into the season, I hope that it's really obvious that he's the best guy for the job. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that they would name him just because he's been around the longest. Like, I don't see that.
I honestly think worst case scenario is all 3 guys are pretty similar, and they have to make a decision, because then it opens up more room for criticism from the public, because again, everyone always thinks they're the quarterback coach and that there's always a different quarterback that should be playing. And so I think it makes that situation even worse if all 3 guys are pretty similar, Right. And I agree with Indy Sailor. You just got to trust the OC at the end of the day to pick the quarterback that's going to most efficiently run their offense and generate the most amount of points.
Yeah. And look, Mike Denbrock coached a Heisman winning, quarterback. I trust Mike Denbrock to make the right decision in this one. And so
he will.
I feel good about it. This is going to be the first healthy quarterback competition in a while at Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And there's a reason that they didn't go to the portal for a quarterback, because they feel really good about the situation that they have in their quarterback room right now. Whether that's Steve, whether that's Kenny, whether that's CJ, whatever, they feel good about it. And if they feel good about it, I feel good about it. This is still the same staff that went to the national championship game last year. So I still feel good about the entire situation. So a couple more here, and then we'll jump to rapid fire. Here we go. I'm going to let you tackle this one. I am Tenzin says, what's the biggest issue you see with the men's basketball team by comparison with the women's basketball team?
I think there's just an overall lack of identity. And when you have a lack of identity, there's a lack of kind of playing good team basketball, kind of knowing your objectives in a game in and game out basis. And I think another big problem is I just don't think the roster is there yet 100%, and I think it goes back to a lot of what you were saying earlier in the week is, I love Mike Bray, and Mike Bray did a great job at Notre Dame and gave us some fantastic seasons and some runs deep into the tournament. But he left the cupboard pretty dry when he left. And Micah Shrewsbury's first year was basically all transfers. second year is more transfers and guys that you might have recruited who are tapping into their first, full season as a potential starter, essentially. So, just things don't turn around in, ACC basketball with the snap of the fingers. It was always going to take some time to get this thing fully turned around. And I do think that you can honestly, point fingers or blame people like myself because I thought that they would be better this season. I thought we'd, potentially see a team that's more on the bubble and that sort of stuff. So, they need to be really good defensively, and I think they need to figure out their identity on offense a bit better. And I think that was the number one thing you knew about Mike Bray, whether you liked it or not. The offense he ran, that was their identity, and they were going to run it year in, year out. Slow down, time of possession, space it out, good passes, get your shot. We happen to miss, we miss, but you knew what you were getting game in and game out with Mike Bray on offense. I just don't see an offensive identity, and I don't see a roster that can really help overcome some of those offensive deficiencies.
No, that's fair. Team chemistry is a problem. Defensive effort is a problem. Scoring the basketball when you need to is a problem. There's so many issues. I mean, you could just, list them off. The fact they were down, 25-5 last night, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. And we'll have a question about Notre Dame basketball and rapid fire as well, but it's rough. It's rough, and they're underachieving for what people thought might happen in year two based on what happened in year one. There has not been progression, and that's the biggest problem. Whether you want to blame it on the players, whether you want to blame it on the coach, whether you want to blame it on whatever you want to blame it on. The ACC is not that great of a league right now, and Notre Dame is they're not good. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I think they're 5-12 in the league. They're just not good, and they don't play with the passion that they played with last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So issues, lots and lots of issues that need to get cleaned up that aren't magically going to go away by bringing in a good recruiting class. That's the other piece. So better get things figured out here real quick because the warm seat that Mike is sitting on will only get hotter. So we'll see.
Yeah, he doubled down on it himself. So Micah Shrewsbury is making no excuses. And
no, he's not.
For everyone who just thought that because he went on that rant and, kind of got fired up after the last game that they magically were just going to come out and beat the brakes off of SMU. Come on. Like, what are we really talking about? Like, seeing tweets today about, Micah Shrewsbury really backed up that talk. Okay, you really thought that they were going to flip a season around in one game and beat SMU because the coach got fired up after, a loss a couple nights ago? Let's just be realistic. That's the stuff that actually makes me mad is people out there really are going to start commenting and running their lips of, oh, Micah Shrewsbury really looks like an idiot now after losing to SMU. It's like, again, he knows they got problems and they're not just going to be fixed overnight,
Right, exactly.
Let's not be ridiculous here. This season is a wash. They need to get through this season, and immediately the focus needs to become next season. So until this season is over, I'm really not worried about what they do in these remaining games. Would it be nice to see some life from them? Maybe, beat a couple of teams and make a bit of a push in the ACC tournament? Sure. But let's actually have manageable expectations considering we know where this team is at and the end of the season is really near.
Love it. Love it. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, we got one more to get to from Andre. I'll answer this one real quick. He says, Vince, when is your son's first football game, and are you going to it? His first football game is actually on the road. It is in the St. Louis area, and it is over Labor Day weekend, which, by the way, Notre Dame has a bye. So if things go the way they should go, and he's on the travel roster and he's playing, heck yeah, I'm going to go. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to miss my kid's collegiate debut. There's no chance I'm going to miss that game. So, but he's got to win the starting job first. And so I'm not going if he's not going. So, because they got about 120 guys on the roster and they travel 58. So if you don't make the travel roster, I ain't going because that's about a 5.5 hour drive that I'm not doing to watch somebody else's kid play. So he's got to make the travel roster, and then I'll definitely go. So, but no, looking forward to it. Should be fun. And yeah, I've never been to St. Louis, so even more of a reason to go. So there you go.
We played my sophomore year. We played this team down in St. Louis, and it was the first game of the season. I made the travel roster, was too deep at linebacker, and I was starting on like all the special teams.
Nice.
And you can ask my parents, but it was like 105 degrees out. It was a red and black striped turf field. So the on-field temperature was like 115 degrees. My whole family came because Kansas is pretty close by. Like I had my grandparents there.
Good point.
My aunt and uncle actually came. My parents came. And I just remember being like, man, this is like, we had guys, like cramping up at halftime and all that. Yeah, it's like you could not have picked a worse game to open your season and then playing in over 100-degree heat on a black and red striped turf field.
Do that. Why? 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 I don't get that. I don't get the black and white or black and red. I don't get it. I realize those are your team colors, but that doesn't have to be what you do on the field, man. Woof. Woof. I did the old, Google Maps to this spot, and they do not have a black and red, so that's good. Didn't even think that was a possibility. So it's in a very, 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 very small town outside of St. Louis. Like,
okay.
There's literally not like you got to get a hotel like in the next town over. So it's very small, but I think like the whole town is like the college. So, but anyway, should be fun. Looking forward to it. All right, Jesse, you ready for a little rapid fire?
Pew pew. It is time, baby.
All right. Let me write down the time. All right, let's roll here. So Notre Dame, we were just talking about Notre Dame men's basketball. They gave up 97 points to SMU last night. This would have been the first time since 1990 that the Irish gave up 100+ points at home in regulation, but SMU shut it down in their final possession to stick at 97. The state of Notre Dame men's basketball right now is blank.
The state of Notre Dame men's basketball right now is complete disorder, if we're being honest with you. I think it goes back to kind of what I was just talking about, and they just lack a real identity on both sides of the ball. Micah Shrewsbury wants to play tough, hard defense, but it doesn't seem like everyone else wants to buy in and play tough, hard defense. And then you go offensively, outside of Marcus Burton and, a streaky Shrewsbury here and there, what do they have consistently on the offensive side of the ball? So, there's just a lot of disorder in terms of, a functioning roster that complements the style of basketball that Micah Shrewsbury wants to play. And I think that's what I'm going to lean on the most right now is, Micah Shrewsbury has a really great recruiting class coming in. And I think those are going to be more of kind of the longevity legacy players that he can get to stick around for 2 or 3 years and really change the culture and the style or brand of basketball that Notre Dame really wants to play. I think there's a brand and style that Micah Shrewsbury has in mind. I just don't think he has the pieces to fully execute it right now. And that's what you're seeing is, and I think that's why he said, you can't, this isn't about the players. Don't put it on the players, put it on me, because it is Micah Shrewsbury. It is his team, his offensive and defensive philosophies. I just don't think he really has the players to fill the shoes quite yet.
Yeah, I think my fill in the blank is going to be disarray. I just think that I don't think they just know what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right now. And
nothing seems to be working, and that's the worst thing.
It's like that old cartoon where they're trying to plug the holes and the water keeps coming out, and you plug one hole and then it comes out another hole, and you try to plug that hole and it comes out another. Like there's so many issues right now that there's not enough fingers to plug the holes. You know what I mean? Like they're just going to have to get through the next 5 games. It would be nice if they made some noise and, affected some of these teams' years or whatever, right? They just got to get to the offseason at this point. Obviously, there's not going to be any postseason. no NIT, no NCAA tournament, no nothing. And they just need to get to the offseason and figure this out. Because with the way things are going, I would imagine the transfer portal is going to be active, probably both ways. You've got a 4-man freshman class coming in, so you got a lot of things to look forward to. But you got to get through these next 5 games, man. And I'm like a glutton for punishment. I've been watching the games, and it's rough, man. It's there was a lot of fans dressed as seats at the end of the game last night. It was ugly. It was real ugly. And it's hard to root for a team that looks like they don't give a crap. I'll be perfectly honest with you. And that's who this team feels like right now. And that's a shame. Because after watching last year, I felt like things were changing. Like things were different. It was easy to root for this team because they played like animals on the defensive side of the ball. They couldn't score. You know what I mean? Like last year, they couldn't score, but at least they played hard-nosed defense. And you can root for a team like that. And that's tough. That's tough. All right, I got a throw in for you. Okay, the one that's not on the list. I'm going off script. Okay, former Notre Dame offensive lineman Zach Martin has just announced within the last 40 minutes that he is retiring from the NFL. He is no longer going to be a Cowboy. He is retiring from your beloved Cowboys, Jesse. So Zach Martin means blank to you.
Yeah, Zach Martin means to me one of the toughest and most consistent offensive linemen that I've ever seen wear a Cowboys uniform. I think it's a real shame that they wasted his career and couldn't give him more postseason success, more of a actual Super Bowl run. It makes sense considering, he's already had a really long span as an NFL starter. Injuries are starting to pop up, and
Sure.
It just really doesn't make sense to continue to put your body in harm's way when what real signs are out there that the Cowboys are going to be a Super Bowl contender or Super Bowl threat anytime soon. It's not like they're the, Philadelphia Eagles or Kansas City Chiefs, or
right.
I think it'd be a different conversation.
One more year. Yeah.
Right. So, it just really stinks because he was he's going to be a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He was the definition of a pro's pro. Never heard him complain. Always was out there giving his best, and not only giving his best, but performing at the highest level, playing in one of the toughest leagues in all of sports. So, it sucks because they had a good offensive line group and good running game when Ezekiel Elliott was in his prime. And then the passing game kind of caught up, and then the running game went downhill. So the Cowboys could never put all the pieces together offensively while Zach Martin was there. And it sucks because, again, I don't feel like a career is ever wasted because you got the opportunity to play a really long time in the NFL. You probably made a lot of money, had a lot of impact in the community. You're going to be a Hall of Famer. You're highly successful, but I guarantee if you ask Zach Martin, he would throw all of that out if he could win a Super Bowl. And the Cowboys never gave him a real shot. So
yeah,
that's the sad part.
All right, fair enough. I just want to give you a chance to talk about your guy, since he literally announced his retirement while we're on the show. So that's tough. Although I get it. It's still wild to me that he's retiring. He's 34 years old. Like he's got his whole life ahead of him.
Whole life.
But anyway, speaking of Notre Dame football, Jaden Mickey, I should say former Notre Dame football players, Jaden Mickey has flipped his commitment from the Cal Bears to Boise State. So scale of 1 to 10, does this change your opinion of the regular season matchup in October between the Irish and the Broncos?
I mean, it does a little bit because Boise State, based off what I was reading, has done a really good job kind of in the portal this offseason of continuing to stack high-level players. Obviously, they were just in the playoffs, so there's buzz around the team. And it's always funny to see these Notre Dame guys transfer. It's like, Chris Tyree to Virginia, now, Mickey to Boise State. It always feels like one of these guys that transfers always ends up back on the Notre Dame schedule in some way, And so I think that makes it more naturally enticing. And so, I do think that the needle has moved on this game because of one, it's always, in my opinion, fun to see guys that used to play for Notre Dame and in a new uniform and see how they do. You always want wish them the best and that sort of thing. But the number one thing for me is I think Boise State has some momentum. So I think a lot of people are kind of writing them off and saying, okay, well, they're going to lose Genty and they've got some big holes to fill. I still think that Boise State is not going to be some sort of walk in the park cake type of game. And if Notre Dame comes out sleeping, they could very easily lose that game. And so there's a lot of talent being accumulated at Boise, and I think that is proven even more by this Jaden Mickey signing. I think the other thing that was kind of crazy is, I thought Mickey wanted to be back close home to family, California, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was kind of more surprised to see him, bounce from Cal to Boise all of a sudden, because I know a lot of his rationale and decision making for leaving Notre Dame was, genuinely wanting to be closer to his family after everything that happened with his, mother in the past couple of years. So seeing him go to Boise, I was more scratching my head going, man, I thought he wanted to kind of be back home, not at Boise.
I mean, it's closer to home, but it's still not exactly down the street. So yeah, it doesn't really change my thoughts on the game at all. It's still like a 1, a 2. I mean, it's, Boise is Boise, and they have a reputation all their own, and that part of it makes the game intriguing. It's not more intriguing because Jaden Mickey is going to be wearing the blue and orange and white and whatever other color they're going to wear that day. It's interesting that he changed his commitment. I would love to know a little bit more about that and why, but it doesn't change the game for me in any way. I still think that if you're just looking at matchups and things like that, Notre Dame matches up just fine against Jaden Mickey. So I'm not overly worried about him playing for the Broncos in this game. Texas, USC, and Nebraska have officially canceled their spring games. That is blank.
That is untraditional, Vince. And I'm never the guy up here being a traditionalist, but it just feels like these college teams want to be, more and more operating like NFL teams and using their offseason to kind of prepare more and that sort of thing. I really don't personally understand it. I think the spring game is a great way to see your younger players. It's easy to go out there and practice, Vince, and consistently do the right thing. But when you get under the lights a little bit for these young guys and get on the field and you got fans actually watching and you're inside Notre Dame Stadium, I think a lot can be told, essentially. So, and I know Notre Dame's not doing it, but I'm just kind of using them as, the comparison here a little bit. So I'm just kind of shocked because I hate that the college football game is taking away a lot of those traditions that we grew up and were the foundation of. And it just feels like college football is more and more just becoming the minor leagues of the NFL day in and day out, essentially. So that's the part that I think is kind of stinky.
Well, the reasoning behind it is ridiculous. They don't want teams to be able to scout their players for the transfer.
But you're running your literal most base offense and defense, Vince.
Right.
Like nothing is you are not running any sort of in-depth plays.
Correct. It's literally, as Josh says, he says, I hate it for the fans.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like it's supposed to be like a fan fest. Like that's what it is. That, they run more of their offense and defense in the jersey scrimmage the week beforehand. They don't do anything in the spring game except come out in the game helmets. It's for fans. It's for kids. It's for,
it's a sneak
people that
peek
can't
in the
afford
next season to be excited about what's coming up.
I don't like them canceling the game because I think you're stealing stuff from the fans. And the way things are trending, it's anti-fan, and I don't like it. It's becoming more big business as an anti-fan. And maybe that's naive of me to say that, but that's how I feel. And I don't like it. Look, do I enjoy the spring game? No, I think it's kind of boring. I don't necessarily like going to it. Sometimes the weather's garbage, but at least I get to watch a little bit of football. And I think you're just tearing that away from the fans. I don't think that's okay. And whatever reasoning that they're going to give, as to why they're not doing it, it's not good enough. And I don't like it. So I'm very much against it. I makes me sick. I don't like it. And I will plant my flag on the spring game. Like I'm spoiled. I get to go to all the games, and get paid to be there. Not all fans get to do that. You know what I mean? If I wanted to take my entire family to a game, it would be the spring game. I cannot afford to take my whole family to a regular season game. And so that's why you have the spring game, so that you can keep fans engaged. And I don't like it. I hope Notre Dame doesn't go down that road. I really hope Notre Dame doesn't go down that road.
I don't think they will.
I don't think they will either, but as soon as I say that, they will. So, All right, Jesse. So the Cubs opened up spring training today, at least the game portion of spring training, with the game against the defending World Series champion Dodgers. So scale of 1 to 10, your excitement level for baseball right now.
My excitement for baseball right now is like probably a 4 or 5 out of 10. But it's ramping up, and it's ramping up very quickly. I already have my opening day tickets for Cubs versus Padres in Chicago. So that's already checked off. Like, spring training is nice because you get to see a lot of positional battles and maybe see what top prospects will end up on the actual, MLB roster.
Sure.
But until the games actually start, that's kind of, when I'm 100% all in, when it's, keeps snowing and the car got stuck in the snow today and I'm slipping around, walking everywhere. It's really hard to be excited about baseball. Well, they're in Arizona and Florida and nice warm places, and you don't have to worry about these sort of things. So spring training is a lot of fun though when you can actually be there in person, but when you're stuck in a cold state. Yeah, I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah. So when I played baseball in college, we always did our first kind of trip over spring break, which is, beginning of March basically. Yep. And we'd always go down to Florida, and in our off days, we'd go hang out and watch a lot of spring games and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun, but it's more or less you got to be there type situation. But when this season starts and I'm there on opening day, I'll be a full 10 out of 10. I'm slowly getting there. I'm on a nice, track upwards, basically.
I like that. I feel like we just finished. I mean, it was literally a month ago today that we had the national championship game, I believe. And so I'm still kind of got a little bit of a football hangover right now. I love baseball. Like, this is the time of year that I get excited about baseball. And when I look outside and see the snow and I'm, bundled up doing door duty in the morning and all of these different things, like, that's what gets me excited about baseball. Like, I'm ready for all of this to be away. I'm ready for baseball. I'm ready for this to happen. I'm like a 6 or a 7, I think, right now. I want to, spring training games, you're right. You got to be there to really enjoy it, because you're rarely going to see like an actual lineup that you're going to see in a game.
Right. It's a lot of prospects, and then you mix in like 1 or 2 starters per game, basically.
And I don't like doing that, because then I'm watching a bunch of players that I don't know. And I don't want to get invested in guys that are going to get traded away, that are in the minors and all these other things. So I don't watch a whole lot of spring training games, but I love the fact that spring training is occurring. You know what I mean? Just hearing some news out of Arizona, and,
kind of knowing it's going on in the background a little bit.
Yes. Like, they're getting ready to entertain me. All right. So I'm getting excited about it. So I'm like a 6 or a 7 right now, but you're right. Once opening day hits, it'll be up there. Are they doing like this series in Japan, then coming back for more spring training games?
Yes.
And then doing the regular season?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's how they did it last year. Another part that makes me really excited about spring training is when you have a whole, no matter who you are, Cubs, Phillies, Rockies, when you have a whole positional hole that you didn't fill in the offseason, and you're going to rely on some prospects, basically. And so for the Cubs, that's third base, and they're giving their young top prospect, Shaw, the opportunity to get a crack at it. And they signed Turner, used to play for the Dodgers, and real long.
He's primarily going to be a bench guy. I mean, that's what he's brought in to do.
DH, backup third baseman, probably like the emergency plan if all else fails. But that's the cool part about spring training, is you get to see someone like that, get their opportunity and work up to being, the starter. And kind of really battle it out, right? Because there's no definite starter at third base right now.
Right. Yep. Nope. You're absolutely right. So that's going to be fun to see. Yeah, I do like it when they can kind of rely on a young guy and you hope that he pops and, all of those things. It still wouldn't have been upset if they brought in a different guy, but that's okay. We'll see what Shaw can do over there at the hot corner. So, Jesse, we finally made it. It's the championship of the Four Nations face-off. It's tonight. It's 8 o'clock. It's on ESPN. To you, this game is blank.
This game is much needed for where we're at in sports right now.
Okay.
Football is over. NBA, I know you don't care about the NBA. He's been on All-Star break. The NHL has been on All-Star break. Really, all that's going on, there's really no professional sports going on right now.
Good point.
You're solely kind of relying on men's and women's college basketball, which is great, but it only can go so far, Vince. I need more, and so in this kind of dead period, it's needed, and it's also needed because of what we kind of talked about a couple of days ago as well. There's nothing more than getting hyped up for your country, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's these hockey exhibition games in the middle of the season, whether it's winter curling or no matter what it is, it always brings excitement when you slap countries on it and you represent and you have pride in your country. And so in the dead period where this is going on, I love it, and it's going to be absolutely electric tonight. And the guy who is admittedly a very casual hockey fan, I'm going to be watching, and I'm going to be texting all my Canadian friends, telling them that I hope that they lose.
Do you have a lot of Canadian friends?
Get hurt. I have about 4 Canadian friends.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. It's more than I've got. I'm impressed. For me, this game is the only hockey game I will watch all year. But it's because it's the USA, USA versus Canada. Like you said, when you slap on the country on the front of that sweater, I'm in. Like, I'm all in. This is like a mini Olympics. And I heard an interview this afternoon with the hockey commissioner, and he's like, the reason we're doing this is because we're getting back into pushing our guys into the Olympics, and we're getting back into pushing our guys into the World Cup. And so every 2 years, they're going to be doing this. They're going to have the Olympics, and then 2 years later, they're going to have the World Cup, and then the Olympics, and then the World Cup. And so they're like, why not give them a taste of what it's going to be like with this Four Nations face-off? I love that. Like, amazing. Some forward thinking from a league and a players association, that get the fans excited about something. And it's working. Like, it is working. I mean, I've seen so much about this game, right? You're seeing the pregame speech from Miracle all over the internet today. I saw Craig, the goalie from that team, from the 1980 team. He tweeted about this game tonight. The president called and gave like a pep talk to to Team USA today. Like, this is the game. Like, there's nothing else tonight that matters. Like, I'll watch the first half hour of the women's game at 7:30, and then I'm flipping over to hockey at 8 o'clock to watch Team USA. Like, that's the whole point. And so, yeah, I'm fired up about it, but it's the only hockey game I'm probably going to watch all year until the Olympics next year. So, go USA.
I'm probably going to get booed for this one, and I'm not rooting for this, but I think Canada is going to win tonight.
Oh, Jesse, why? Why do you have to say that?
Again, I'm all for the United States. I will be cheering them on. I think Canada is going to win.
Do you think they're just embarrassed what happened to them last week?
Yeah, I think the U.S. kind of popped off to a degree in the game that wasn't the final championship. And I get it. You were
played in Montreal.
Sending a message. Right. And it was in Canada. I think they were very clearly trying to send a message. But also, U.S. has kind of taken some injuries the last couple of days as well. One of the Kachuk brothers is not 100%. They had to call up an extra defenseman who hasn't, been playing with them the last few weeks, just to have an extra body. So, they're kind of not going through it, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised if Canada is a little bit fresher and has a little bit more of that distaste in their mouth after what happened a couple days ago.
You're damn.
That's all I'm saying.
That's all you are.
Sorry for being analytical.
What am I gonna do with you? It's Team USA all the way. That's all that matters. All right. We don't listen to logic when it comes to this kind of thing. All right. It's USA all the way. Okay.
And nothing else.
Show a little pride in your country. All right. Final question of the night. Since the Notre Dame women are set to tip off against Miami tonight, how about a Miami question? So the fact that the Miami quarterback Carson Beck and Miami women's basketball player Hannah Cavender had 3 luxury cars stolen from them last night is blank. And by the way, it was a Lamborghini, a Mercedes-Benz, and a Land Rover. And the Lamborghini and the Mercedes-Benz are still missing.
So there's 2 sides to this, Vince, and I'm trying to be as empathetic as possible. It sucks. As someone who's had their car stolen,
that's true.
No matter, and I've had it happen 2 times actually. I'm not afraid to admit that.
Wow.
It sucks, and there's no worse feeling than waking up in the morning and seeing your car literally isn't there. Like it's kind of the most. How do I put it? It's like one of the more surreal moments that you go through because you're like,
what?
My car is literally not here right now. What is happening? And so it sucks. It's very stressful. But on the flip side of that, I don't think it will be as stressful for Carson Beck and Hannah Cavender as it would be for the working class person who relies on their car to get to their job, that needs their job to take their kids to the doctor, to practice, to school, whatever it might be. Us everyday common folk, it's more important because we rely on our car and we don't have the resources to quickly replace the car, be a high priority when finding the car. You can go down the list, right? And so when you hear it happens to them, it sucks. But it's also still kind of like poor me because they got those cars for free from someone because of the NIL deals that they had. They didn't spend their hard-earned money. And, when I was 20 years old, I didn't have a freaking Mercedes-Benz and a Lamborghini just sitting in my garage. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm a little, the empathy is lacking to a degree because you were spoiled. And so did you do everything necessary to protect your car, to get your car out of plain sight, to not let people know that you're Carson Beck and you have a Lamborghini parked on the street outside of your condo probably? You know what I mean? So there's a lot that goes into it. And again, I feel bad. It sucks. There's no rhyme or way to get out of that. But on the flip side of it, I don't think that those 2 are going to be hurting. And I think they have the resources to replace them with no skin off their back, essentially.
I feel like this is a ringing endorsement for garages, number 1. And if you're going to have $100,000 toy, why would you not lock it up? You know what I mean? Like I tell kids that all the time, when they put their stuff in the locker room, lock your stuff up if you don't want it to get stolen. Take care of these things. It's one of the reasons that I make my kids buy their own cell phones. It's because they take care of them more when they've got skin in the game. And like you said, they don't have skin in the game. You know what I mean? Like they can easily replace it, or they were given it for free, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I don't feel bad. I really don't. I don't feel bad at all. It's like I don't feel bad for the kids when they get their stuff taken from them when they don't lock it up. You had the opportunity and you didn't take it. And I just think it's pretty funny. Like you bought yourself a Mercedes-Benz. Kind of being
spoiled at the end of the day,
Right. And a Lamborghini. And I remember seeing articles about the fact that he's driving around in a Lamborghini. So it's not like this is a big secret. You know what I mean?
He's kind of almost showing that I'm Carson Beck. Here's my Lamborghini. Here's where I live. Here's my girlfriend that plays on the women's basketball team at Miami. Come find us. Come take our cars.
And there was social media when she got that Land Rover too, because remember people were saying that he bought it for her, and they're like, "Oh no, we got it for ourselves." Remember that? So everybody knows what you drive. Like, I don't know.
This is what happens when you put yourself out there so much.
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
People find out stuff about you that they should.
Yes. That's exactly right. I'm not condoning stealing a car. Like I'm not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it kind of serves you right at the same time. So, whatever. I just thought that would be a fun one to finish up with. All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of IB Nation Sports Talk, everybody. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends. Give us a 5-star review on whatever platform that you are listening, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Apple Podcasts, whatever the case may be. Jump on there. Help us out. We really appreciate it. And we will be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock with our normal edition of Friday Fire. So a little rapid fire on Friday. Are you going to be here tomorrow?
3-man crew. I'm here.
Nice. So it'll be a 3-man booth tomorrow. So looking forward to that. So everybody, we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.